It is midsummer on the farm and our vegetable garden has taken off, so we are enjoying our in-season vegetables fresh from the farm. Every year my husband plants a garden and he adds more to it each year, and we enjoy the fresh in-season vegetables all summer long, and we do our best to try to preserve as many of them as possible to get us through the fall and winter months as well. We currently have a bunch of onions and garlic, fresh squash and zucchini, and we even have some lettuce still remaining in the summer heat. So this week I'm going to show you some simple meals that we are eating fresh from our farm. When I cook, I like to focus on wholesome and simple ingredients and ingredients that are sourced locally or from our farm. So right now, our vegetable garden is doing very well and we have a lot of zucchinis to get through. So one of my favorite ways to use zucchinis from the garden is to just simply cut them up and oven roast them with a little bit of seasoning and Parmesan cheese on top. This is just so simple to make and it's very flavorful, and it's a great way to use up the abundance of zucchinis that most people will have in their gardens right now. There's a lot of other ways I like to cook zucchinis as well, and I'm going to show you later on a side dish that I brought to a 4th of July party to use up some more of those garden fresh zucchinis. Potatoes are a staple in our home. I use them in some form for almost every dinner we have because they are simple and they are filling. We plant a lot of potatoes in our garden so that way we can have them all year long. We will store a lot of them to eat in the fall, and then for the winter time I will chop a lot of them up and then par bake them so that I can store them in the freezer. And then I can grab them back out and use them in meals very simply. They're great when you fry them or oven bake them, or even throw them into a wintertime soup. So that is why we like to plant a lot of potatoes. And one of the big garden jobs coming up soon is going to be digging up all of our potatoes and then preserving them. Last year, we butchered 2 hogs to put in our freezer. So we saved a couple hogs, we didn't sell them, and we butchered them ourselves. And I noticed the other day that we are down to mostly just ham steaks left over. We already ate all of our pork chops, all our pork steaks. We have some breakfast sausage we're still working through, but I decided we need to start using up these ham steaks. And one of my favorite ways to use ham steaks is to simply bread them with some whole wheat flour and then to pan sear them in the cast iron skillet. It's really simple and they're actually really flavorful. When we butchered our hogs, I made sure to trim a lot of the excess fat off, and then I saved it all so that I could make my own pork lard to use for cooking and frying all year long. I actually just store it in jars in my freezer and then pull it out as I need it and keep it in my refrigerator. We got invited to a pool party on 4th of July, so I wanted to make sure to bring a side dish that everyone would enjoy and something to share. So of course I needed to work through more zucchinis from the garden, and this is something that I have made before and it always turns out really good. Basically, I just call them zucchini fritters. I always shred the zucchini up and then I make sure to run them through a tea towel to drain all the excess water, because anytime you bake zucchinis, especially fresh zucchinis from the garden, you're going to have a lot of water in them if you don't carefully strain it out beforehand. And then after that, I just go ahead and put a bunch of seasonings, shred some cheese, put some flour and an egg in it so that it will all hold together in like a small patty. Then I just simply bake them until they're nice and crispy. I love to keep some fresh herbs right outside my kitchen door, so that way when I'm in the middle of cooking and I decide to add an herb to something, I can just simply walk out and grab it. I found when I used to keep them in the garden, I never used them as much as I thought I would because I would have to harvest them and then try to remember to incorporate them in meals before they went bad. So now that I have them right outside my kitchen, it's super easy to just run out in the middle of cooking and grab whichever herb that I want to include in that meal. The next meal that I am making is probably the most simple meal that I made all week, but it is also my favorite meal. I'm just going to simply put some potatoes in the oven and get them going so that we can have some baked potatoes, and then I am going to use up some more of that zucchini and squash. One of my favorite ways to make it is to deep fry them, so I will just go ahead and bread them with some whole wheat flour and seasoning, and then run them through an egg wash and then fry them. So it's super simple, and it's something that we do very often in the summer months to work through that fresh zucchini and squash from the garden. Earlier this week, I went to the butcher to pick up some beef that I had ready up there to sell at the farmer's market. And when I got it all home to inventory it and put it away in the freezer, I realized there was a few steaks that weren't packaged exactly how I like to sell them. So I decided to pull them aside for us to grill tonight. And I always love whenever I find steaks that are either not cut to standard for selling or the vacuum pack has been broken, because that means we get to enjoy them for ourselves. While the steaks were grilling and the rest of the food was cooking, I decided to fry up some pork joel that we had from our hogs that we butchered. So joel is actually a cut of pork from the pig's cheek, and a lot of times that would be wasted, but whenever we butcher hogs ourselves or when I take them up to the local processor, I always make sure to get as much of the pig as possible. And joel is really good. It's almost like a bacon. It's a lot fattier than bacon, but it's still very flavorful, and I thought it would be great to put on top of our baked potatoes. Something else that we have a lot of in our garden right now is cabbage. So cabbage for me, it's not really something that I can preserve and use later on in the winter. So I like to try to use it all fresh. I did make, the other day I made a big batch of sauerkraut, and I'm going to keep it in our refrigerator, so I'm sure it'll be fine in our fridge for several months, but otherwise I try to use the cabbage fresh. So I found that it's important to prep some easy sides that I just have on hand, even if I don't really have a plan for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a batch of coleslaw right now. This This coleslaw was really simple to make. I just shredded up my cabbage and added some homemade mayo and some fresh seasonings to it. I also cut up some fresh cilantro from my little herb garden and used that as a garnish. This coleslaw will be the perfect side for a meal coming up soon, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep it in my fridge and have it ready to go. So in our garden, we of course like to plant vegetables that we know we will use a lot of and ones that are also easy to preserve. I so far have not learned canning. I know it's simple and I'm sure I'm going to try to learn it here soon. It's just something I haven't done anything of yet. So for now, I'm just learning to prep all the vegetables for the freezer, and so far that has been a pretty easy way to save a lot of our garden vegetables and to be able to eat them all year long. I just really enjoy having a vegetable garden because when I cook a meal, I love to look at all the ingredients and to see what I was able to do with all the food that we raised and grew on our farm. And that has always just been something I really enjoy, is cooking that fresh food from our farm and just knowing exactly how we raised it and how we grew it. And I know that's not a possibility for everybody, but I do think as a consumer, there's a lot more we can do to source our food directly or locally and to know how it's grown, know how it's raised, and to really feel good about what we're feeding ourselves and our family. Thanks so much for following along for another video. I really hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit about our vegetable garden and what goes into our daily meals when we cook fresh from our farm.